Good morning, my name's Katie, and together with my colleagues Sonia and Zara, we're going to be presenting our work on physical manipulatives that we've done this year, thinking about student engagement. So building on the work that we did here last year, using a fraction bar app, we got some nice results, but they were slightly inconclusive. So for example, if you look at the bars at the bottom of the screen there, students were unsure about whether the app had helped them to be independent and solve problems. But they did suggest that they agreed with the idea that the app had helped them understand fractions better. And you can see that by the blue bar, the blue part of the bar being larger than the red part. So the blue part indicates that they agree that the app had helped them understand better. So a bit of mixed results, slightly inconclusive, but we did also feel like we needed more time in lessons with students to get used to using the app, both for them and for us. So this year, what we've been doing, as you can see here, is we've been experimenting with a couple of other resources. And this time we've used physical manipulatives rather than virtual manipulatives. And we've planned all our own resources as well as borrowing some stuff from the TES website. We've all done a bit of planning and we've selected our own classes for this work. So here are the 6 areas of results that we're going to present to you. They range from our own experience as teachers, but also the experience of students as well. And yeah, so these are our research interests and aims. We started with the idea that we wanted to make learning of maths more accessible to learners. And this led us to think about student engagement, which we've defined in the box at the bottom. We were careful not just to focus on sort of like fun activities. We saw in the literature that, that thinking of manipulatives just as a fun activity can subvert their value as mathematical tools to engage people in mathematics. In cycle 2, we also started thinking about teacher confidence and how that was affecting things, and also about our task design. So over to Sonia. Sonia, are you there? Are you muted?
I'm muted. Apologies, I was talking away. Apologies. So good morning. Here's a map of our research cycles and the journey that we took this year. Initial teacher questionnaires indicated that none of us had much experience using manipulatives, although some of us had recent training. We conducted AR cycle 1 in order to get us into the classroom. There were short lesson segments with low stakes. Student interviews were conducted in pairs, randomly selected out of those who had over 90% attendance. From that, we realized we needed more time in lessons with the resources and students. We also did a training with Mike Ollerton, who suggested there may be benefits in students covering a range of topics with one manipulative to increase familiarity. This also allowed us to be more accommodating to different schemes of work. We aim to each teach 3 topics with 1 or 2 classes with GEO boards. AR cycle 3 had no intervention but aimed to collect more detailed data from teachers and quantitative data from all students involved. Data was analysed informally from AR cycle 1 and 2 to inform subsequent research cycles. All qualitative data from the interviews, reflections, and class discussions were coded for themes and were quantified to verify dominant themes. Quotes and case studies were pulled out. Quantitative data from an example from the student sample was analysed using simple statistical diagrams. One class with learners aged 19 and the rest were students aged between 16 and 19. As you can see, most of our learners started the year on a grade 2 in GCSE math, followed by a grade 3. We believed our small class sizes were a result of the disruption from COVID-19 over the past 2 years. Different teachers taught different amounts. Teachers taught different topics as per their preference and scheme of work. And looking at the table, we questioned why was there a difference in the teacher uptake. Now, as you can see from the quote, time constraints were a concern both in planning and lesson time. The quote exemplifies why planning may take longer. We would have all liked more experienced colleagues to work with, and we really couldn't collaborate a lot as we were working from different sites. The researcher Moya found that the teachers' prior beliefs about how certain groups of students learn or concerns about their behaviour affected their uptake of manipulatives, and that was also our case. We were quite concerned about student behaviour. Okay. So confidence generally improved over time through planning and practicing. Teachers gained confidence from student feedback and their own reflection on how things had gone. Some things didn't go so well. Some topics were harder than others. Sometimes ways of working were different and new. And after looking at the data gathered from myself, members of the team and our students, it was very confidence boosting to see the positive feedback from the students. I think as teachers, we need to be aware when introducing something new to our teaching skill sets, there tends to be our insecurities. We tend to get comfortable teaching in a particular way.
Good morning. And our finding about the students' engagement. As shown on the pie chart on the slide, a majority of students would like to use manipulatives again. Students were more positive about geoboards. This may have been for a variety of reasons. We addressed a few issues in the second research cycle. For example, taking longer in lessons, doing more lessons on different topics, getting some training and increasing teacher skills and confidence. Geoboards are less rigid in the way they can be used, allowing us to plan more open and varied activities. Quotes from students also showed they were engaging in mathematical activities such as measuring and visualizing, not just fun activities. Here, we asked students to comment on their concentration as a proxy for engagement, which we thought may be a more accessible term. Again, we see that the students preferred the geoboards. From analyzing and coding the qualitative data from all research cycles, themes around student engagement emerged. These are on the right of the screen. The quotes from students exemplifying some of these themes are on the slide. The first one, students not engaging because of alternate existing methods. This was most common in students who were more confident with formal methods. In the second one, students' engagement changing as they become familiar with the resource. In the third one, there are some examples of why the students commenting on interactivity. And the last one, an example of a student becoming more confident. These are two quotes from teachers. The first exemplifying the power of the visual aesthetic to boost engagement. The second exemplifying students being able to access more mathematics through the resource once they are familiar. We also had some interesting and positive case students for ALS and SEN students, indicating enjoyment, engagement, and increased access to mathematical activities. On this slide, we can see mixed reviews from students, class discussions and interviews, although again, mainly positive. In the survey, we asked the students which statement they agreed with most, and the results are shown on the pie chart. Over 50% of the students believe the manipulatives were useful for learning maths. This is the orange bit. Around 25% believe that manipulatives helped prepare them for the exam, the green bit on the pie chart, and with around 10% believing they were for fun only, and the rest agreeing with none of the above. The pie chart on the slide shows that more students than not felt the resources were age appropriate. There were mixed reviews from teachers on whether they felt they prepared the students for the exam, but more positive than negative, especially in the interviews in AR Cycle 3. Overall, the data gives a positive picture of a student and teacher perceptions of the appropriateness of these resources for this cohort.
So we also thought about open and closed tasks. The top task there, the Pythagoras theorem, is an example of an open task where students are just invited to make any triangle on their board. And the bottom, the enlargement activity, is an example of a more closed task where students are told exactly what to do and then to work something out. And we were inspired by some of the tasks introduced by Mike Ollerton to try and make more open tasks. But we didn't gather enough data on this to report on it properly, but at least 2 of us indicated that when the initial task was open, for example, allowing students to make their own shape, there was an increased engagement within the room. So I just want to talk a little bit about bridging activities. The point of using manipulatives was to help students engage and access mathematics, but also to be able to apply those skills into an exam. And this is where bridging activities come on, to move you from being able to work on the manipulative resource to being able to work on sort of a more formal bit of work. And you can see in the bottom left diagram, you've got a reflection that's been copied down from a geoboard. When it was on the geoboard, it was correct, and it moved onto the paper and became slightly incorrect. And there's a nice quote from the learning assistant who was working with that student above it, just highlighting the difficulty between moving between different modes. But also from the literature, we know that Mason and Watson say that the learning occurs specifically in the multi-directional movement between different stages, so inactive, iconic, symbolic, or concrete, pictorial, abstract. And we also know that Hart said that formalization often fails with manipulatives due to a lack of bridging activities. So we were keen to think about this. So conclusions and take-home messages. We think that there's been a positive effect on student engagement, but there's lots more for us to learn. And we think if you want to try this, give yourself time, give your students time to become familiar with the resource and keep building your confidence and skills. Also consider the time of year that you start working on this. You need time for people to get used to doing to working with these resources, and do think about the bridging activities. For us, our next steps are we're going to make more time to plan with the manipulatives before next year, and we're going to embed what we've learned into our schemes of work. We also want to think about differentiation, comparisons between different student working levels, and also the different types of tasks that manipulatives afford us to use. We're going to work hopefully more on bridging activities as well. So thank you so much for listening. We look forward to your questions, and if you want any of the references that we've cited today, then they're there on the screen. Thank you.